He burned books to erase history. He buried scholars alive to silence opposition. He built an army of 8,000 terracotta soldiers to guard him in death. He unified an entire civilization through sheer force of will and left a legacy so powerful that China still carries his name today. This is the story of Qin Shi Huang, the most dangerous man who ever lived. This is the Media Digest, where history meets the headlines. To understand what Qin Shi Huang achieved, you first have to understand the world he was born into. For over 500 years before his rise, China was not a unified nation. It was a collection of 7 warring kingdoms, each with its own ruler, its own army, its own laws, its own currency. Historians call this period the Warring States period, and the name is not an exaggeration. These kingdoms were in a constant state of brutal, bloody conflict. Millions died. Entire cities were razed to the ground. The land was soaked in war. Into this world, in 259 BC, a boy was born who would change everything. His name was Ying Jing. He became king of the Qin state at just 13 years old. A child thrust onto a throne surrounded by enemies, advisors who underestimated him, and rivals who wanted him dead. What they did not understand was that Ying Jing was not an ordinary child. He was calculating, ruthless, and possessed of a vision that no one around him could fully comprehend. By the time he was 21, he had crushed an internal rebellion, executed those who betrayed him, and taken full personal control of the Qin kingdom. He then turned his attention outward. One by one, over the next 17 years, he systematically destroyed each of the 6 remaining kingdoms. Not through luck, not through accident. Through meticulous military strategy, brilliant use of intelligence networks, and a willingness to do whatever it took to win. By 221 BC, at just 38 years old, Ying Jing had done what no man in Chinese history had ever done. He had unified China, and he gave himself a new title to match his achievement: Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. What happened next was nothing short of extraordinary. Qin Shi Huang did not simply conquer China, he rebuilt it from the ground up. He standardized the written language so that every corner of his empire could communicate. He standardized weights and measures so that trade could flow freely. He standardized the axle width of carts so that roads could be used uniformly across the entire empire. He built a network of roads stretching over 4,000 miles, connecting his empire in a way that had never existed before. He constructed massive canals to move troops and supplies. He tore down the walls that divided the old kingdoms and began construction on a unified northern defensive barrier, the early foundations of what would eventually become the Great Wall of China. In just over a decade, he transformed a collection of warring states into the world's most sophisticated civilization. The scale of what he built in such a short time remains almost incomprehensible, even by modern standards. But there was another side to Qin Shi Huang, one that history cannot ignore. His rule was absolute and his methods were brutal. He divided China into 36 administrative districts, each controlled by officials who reported directly to him, eliminating any possibility of regional power that could challenge his own. He implemented a system of collective punishment. If one person in a community broke the law, the entire community suffered. He was so obsessed with controlling thought itself that in 213 BC, he ordered the burning of all books that did not serve the state. History, philosophy, poetry, all of it destroyed. Scholars who resisted were buried alive, hundreds of them. He built his palace on a scale so massive that 700,000 laborers worked on it simultaneously. Those who opposed him disappeared. Those who questioned him did not get a second chance. He was building a perfect empire, and he was willing to destroy anything and anyone that stood in its way. Perhaps the most revealing thing about Qin Shi Huang was his obsession with death, specifically, his terror of it. Despite controlling the most powerful empire on Earth, he was consumed by the fear that it would all end. He sent expeditions across the known world, searching for the elixir of immortality. He consulted alchemists, mystics, and sorcerers. He survived multiple assassination attempts, at least 3 are recorded, which only deepened his paranoia. He slept in a different room every night so no one could find him. He stopped appearing in public, and he began construction on his tomb, a project so enormous it took 700,000 workers 38 years to complete. Inside, according to ancient records, rivers of liquid mercury flowed through a scale model of his entire empire. And guarding it all, 8,000 terracotta warriors, each one unique, each one built to protect him for eternity. The irony of Qin Shi Huang's life is devastating. The man who feared death above all things died at just 49 years old, likely poisoned by the mercury pills his own alchemists had given him as an immortality elixir. He died on a tour of his empire, far from his capital. His chief advisor, terrified of losing power, kept the death secret for weeks, traveling with the rotting body and forging imperial decrees to maintain control. Within 4 years of his death, the empire he had spent his entire life building collapsed into civil war. The dynasty he had declared would last 10,000 generations survived for just 15 years after his death. And yet, the China he created never disappeared. The unified language, the administrative systems, the very idea of China as a single nation, all of it traces back to one man, the most dangerous man in history. Qin Shi Huang is proof that the line between greatness and tyranny is thinner than we like to believe. He built one of the most extraordinary civilizations in human history, and he did it through methods that no civilized world would tolerate today. His empire lasted 15 years. His legacy has lasted over 2,000. Whether that makes him a monster or a genius depends entirely on which side of history you were standing on. This has been the Media Digest. Stay sharp.